I remember my first training mission very well. I was in a Grumman F6F Hellcat, flying with a squadron of my mates. I was the new guy, and so I remained on the tarmac while the others passed me up and formed up behind our squad leader, up ahead in the distance. I decided to target my squad leader. 20. Flying as Blue 10. And I fueled up and armed up on the tarmac and got behind the group flying as Tail and Charlie off to the left and rear of everybody else. I decided I'd stay to the left and rear of the crowd and stay a little lower than everybody else whenever it was practical to do so that I would have a better view of them. It turns out, in a Hellcat at least, it's a lot easier to look up than down. When somebody's below you, you can't see through your cockpit to see them. After I sat on the cockpit a while, I decided instead of targeting the flight leader, I would target player 8. My flight leader took off, followed by the others, and finally I took off. Full throttle, for emergency power, dropping 4 miles of flaps, and lifting gently off the ground. I raised my landing gear. As I began to pick up speed, I began gradually raising my flaps from level 4 to level 3 to level 2 to level 1. I made sure I didn't raise them too fast because I didn't want to stall out at low speed. Level 0. When my butts dropped below radar range, I lost the targeting reticle around Blue 8, but when he climbed back up above radar altitude, I got it back again. So here I was, flying off to the left of the group as the new guy and below everybody else. It turned out it was really quite a bit of work just to not crash into anybody. It was constantly looking around to see where everybody had gone, making sure nobody behind me might crash into me, and making sure I didn't crash into anybody in front of me. It was especially complicated when they made left turns because, of course, they were turning toward me. And so I just resolved to stay below and to the left of everybody as much as I could. After a while, I saw the enemy aircraft. They flew right through our formation below everybody else, and I guess I had the best view of them because I was down the lowest. It was 5 Ju88 Stuka dive bombers, and flight leader turned us around at that point to get back behind the bad guys. I found myself over on the right of the group at that point, so I was a little nervous about that and headed off to the left and threaded my way through some little rocky crags while still maintaining my low position. As we got closer in to the bad guys, we got behind them, the group started porpoising, or what do you call it, jinking, just kind of jumping up and down a lot because those Stukas have tail gunners, and they were shooting that back at us. So I started doing what they were doing, just kind of porpoising and bobbing and weaving a lot to make myself as small and as difficult a target as possible. Now with 5 of us back there, of course, the odds of me getting hit, being a target, were 1 in 5, and because I was the last guy, I was probably in the safest position at this point. But I could see the Stukas up ahead, this formation of our Hellcats. Flight lead was making loops and sometimes turning back to avoid getting too close at this point while he gave us instructions about how to form up and what to do when it was time to attack. Since we were all new at this, we all needed a lot of guidance. Being the newest of all, I was the one that needed the most. I hadn't suffered any damage yet, although I'd heard targeting sweeps hitting me. You get a little beep when you're being targeted by one of those enemy aircraft, and I could see them up in the distance. They were just little tiny specks up in the distance. I make a move and make our attack. Now the bad guys were headed to the west, and they passed up our main airfield. It looked like they were circling beyond our secondary airfield. There they are there. I can see two bad guys up ahead, but I don't want to get back behind my friendlies. It looked like they passed up our main airfield, and they were getting, and then passed up our secondary airfield. Then it looked like they were going to turn west and make a run on our secondary airfield. So once they turned west, we moved back toward the west behind them to follow them in. And some of our guys were in position to make a run at them before they made their dive run attack. Others were not. I began taking a lot of radar, so we started to get kind of nervous. But once everybody else got in and started making their move, I did too. I could see our own secondary airfield up ahead. There was our airfield. And I figured the dive bombers were probably had already made a run on it. We're diving on it. Watch the action above me. Well, there they were, diving straight down on my airfield and taking shots at me. I took a little damage there. My airplane shuddered from some kind of hit. I decided to go to red 20.
Red 1.
I decided to target aircraft red 1, and everybody else had already made a run and I hadn't yet, so it was time for me to do something. So I flew out ahead after the enemy lead aircraft, got in behind him. He was targeted my target reticle, and shots into him. There were airplanes around there shooting at me. It was a dangerous neighborhood to be in. First victory, but I'd taken 29% damage, so it was time to get out of Dodge. I turned back toward the west. As they made their exit. I still had full engine power, but with 29% damage, my airplane didn't roll as well as it should, didn't turn as well as it should. I couldn't quite maintain high speed, but I learned later that all my buddies also took some damage, so my aircraft was performing more or less like theirs were. As I was headed back, I realized I had one friendly behind me, so I decided to move back and get into my tail end Charlie position. This flight lead got on the radio and started trying to get us to form up. I tried to gain on him, but my mercy power was inoperable. I had too much engine damage for a whip. So I just firewalled the throttle into full military power and followed my group. We were headed, first we were headed east, continuing to try to follow toward the enemy airfield, but looked like we had shot all of the Stukas down. So flight lead wanted to either just verify that they were all down or check out the enemy airfield, see what he could see of it. So we headed north and east a little bit until it was time to head home. Obviously, if we got too close to the enemy airfield, we would attract the attention from the enemy gunners, and that's not good. That's never fun. I was beginning to feel pretty good about this flight and what it's like to fly a powerful naval aircraft. And fortunately, I also confirmed this is a very rugged airplane, and even though I took several hits from the Stukas, their lightweight rear-firing machine guns weren't really powerful enough to, at least they didn't get me this time. Oh, I love that F6F Hellcat. It's a great airplane. It's rugged. It's not particularly fast, but it turns great. It climbs reasonably well. It does everything really well, and it can definitely outmatch the Zeros and the light-hitting turn fighters of the world. Hard-hitting, pretty hard-hitting with the 650 caliber machine guns. It's just a great airplane, and it just feels right. It flies well. It's stable. It's just a really good gun platform. I never built up to real high speed on the way home. My airplane just wasn't capable of it, but it was now slow enough to drop some flaps, so I started doing that. Had to get my nose up for a while to slow down. And being tail end Charlie, I had to wait around while everybody else settled in on the runway. And then I dropped my own and came in to join. This was a particularly nice mission because my flight leader was so good. Our flight leader was so good at just leading us right into the best position near the flight of Stukas. And it turned out everybody got a victory. That's the story of my first combat flight.